night of literature, literary readings, and everything in between with our MFA cohorts. Tonight will be our prose writers, and we'll have a series of readings, each reading will be introduced by one of our second year writers. This is the last you'll hear from me. From here on out, it's all them. So I'm going to hand things over to Taylor Thomas, who's going to introduce our first year cohort prose writer of the evening. Taylor.
Makella Brems is a first-year MFA student and fourth-year Ph.D. student in political science, which is huge, both those at the same time. Her writing explores the rapidly evolving relationship between humans, nature, and technology in the age of the Anthropocene. She's a graduate fellow at the Notre Dame Institute for Advanced Study. She was previously a visiting scholar at the Rachel Carson Center in Munich, and she's from Phoenix, Arizona. Makella.
Today I'll be reading a short fiction story I've been working on called It Doesn't Rain Like It Used to. It doesn't rain like it used to. On July nights, the clouds would roll over the jagged mountains and into the valley, heavy and bursting. Canals overflowed, pools overflowed, lightning struck Palo Verdes. Wind ripped palm trees from their roots and sent them toppling into power lines. Sometimes, before the flood, dust would well up in a giant wave on the outskirts of town and advance on the suburbs like some harbinger of the end of days, swallowing up cars on the four-lane highway. Once the storm passed, the hot night air would buzz with cicadas and croaking toads. The wet concrete, now cool enough to walk barefoot down the driveway and splash in the water rushing through the ditches, so fast and full you wanted to faint. You could feel the desert drinking deep. Bony cactus spines turned turgid, gorged succulents. The brown mountainside behind your house made verdant in a matter of minutes. You could believe in resurrection. You saw it happen with your own eyes. And the sweet, wet smell of the creosote bush, far away and home, everywhere home, green-gray longing and satisfaction. Your parents, usually wary of letting you wander unattended, would release you to dig in the sand pits with the neighborhood kids down the street. Perhaps while you were away, they made love. Perhaps they spoke in muted tones and giggled and cooed like the mourning doves in the alley. But it doesn't rain like it used to. Now the valley stays so hot that the clouds don't come. They travel as far as the superstitions and then stop. The rising heat of the city works like a force field, fending off approaching summer storms. No respite. Days and days of 115 Fahrenheit plus. Century-old saguaros suffocate, shrivel, rot. Inhuman temperatures drive commuters mad. Near the end of July, a man in an SUV follows a man in a sedan that cut him off to a Walmart parking lot and unloads 2 rounds in the sedan man's chest. Fires rage, nostrils burn and bleed. The neighborhood kids have grown and moved away. A Circle K now sits where the sand pits used to be, as do a vape shop and a quick cash loan center. Your father works from home. Your mother no longer works. She no longer likes to leave the house. You know they cannot afford this, but neither can they afford the therapy for your father's back that might let him get another job, or the therapy for your mother's mind that might let her get any job, or the therapy for their marriage that might let everyone get some sleep. You take up with a guy you meet at a coffee shop so that you have somewhere to go when the arguing starts. The first time you go to bed with a guy, whose name could be Joey or Colin or Corey, your eyes tear up afterward. You're not sure why. Corey or Colin or Joey believes it is because the sex is transcendent. You let him go on thinking this. You tell yourself it is only temporary. You just graduated. Soon you will find a job. Soon you will have your own place. Soon. On the days when you still sleep at home, you have taken to waking up early to hike the mountain behind your house before the temperature climbs into the triple digits. You've just returned from one such hike, shoes dusty and face beet red. Your mother sits at the kitchen table with you. Your father stands over the stove, humming while he scrambles eggs. He does all the cooking these days, and most of the chores. You think to get up and help him, but then your mother says, "I don't want you doing that hike anymore." You set your coffee down. "Why?" you ask. The acidity in your tone surprises you, but not your mother. "It's not safe," she says. "Why not?" you ask. You know where this is going, but you want to make her say it. "I had a dream last night," she says. You sigh. She continues, "In the dream, a man wearing a long coat came up to you while you were on the mountain. He wanted to hurt you," she says. Your father puts the eggs on the table, attempting to defuse the situation. "Bon appetit," he insists. Your ears start to feel itchy and hot. A drop of sweat behind your knee trickles down into your sock. "Mom, are you kidding me?" you say, trying to throw darts with your words. "Promise me you won't go anymore," she says. Your dad gives you a look like, "Just go with it, I beg of you." You have noticed that lately your mother seems to harness the ire you direct toward her and then unleash it on your father. You adjust your tone. Even if some of your dreams were prophetic or whatever, which they're not, this one is obviously a dud. If anyone wore a coat right now, they would be dead in like 5 seconds. "At least bring mace," she says. "Fine. And don't wear your headphones." You go to protest. Another glare from your father. "Fine." The next morning, you wake up as the sun is rising and put your hiking clothes on. You leave the mace in the drawer. You put your headphones in. You open the front door. You pause. You take your headphones out and set them inside. You want to listen to the birds, you tell yourself. You slip out of the house and cut through 2 alleys with overflowing dumpsters to get to the trailhead. The hard dirt path to the top of the mountain is short but steep. You keep one eye fixed on the low-lying brush lining the trail where the sand-colored Mojave rattlesnake is known to coil and wait. When you get to the top, you scale a line of jagged rocks above the trail and sit in an alcove in the mountainside that you discovered as a child. 2 red-tailed hawks circle above in the already sweltering breeze. You look out on the mass of rectangular houses and round swimming pools. A few miles to the south, a megachurch and its mega parking lot rival the size of the mountain. When you were young, you believed that being atop the mountain brought you close to God. You would run up ahead of your parents on the trail and sit crisscross applesauce in the alcove, listening. When you felt God was near, you would rise from the ground, raise your outstretched arms, bow your head, and summon the wind. And the wind, you swore, would blow. And your mother, when you told her, believed you. Your mother always believed you. The air has grown so hot now that you can no longer sit still. You get up and climb your way back down to the trail. You are about to descend the other side of the mountain when you hear fast, heavy footsteps approaching from below. Your heart races. You think of the man in your mother's dream. But the person who runs up the trail is wearing a tank top and a snapback. As you make your way down the mountain, you admonish yourself for having entertained your mother's delusions. When you get home, your parents are awake. You can tell from your mother's red eyes that they have already been fighting. You take a quick shower and head for Joey or Colin or Corey's house. Your car is so hot when you climb in that you have to take off your left sock and use it like an oven mitt to grip the steering wheel. You blast the AC. At a red light, a few blocks from the house, you see a man in a pit-stained t-shirt, hunched over and gripping the light post. He pukes up white liquid on the sidewalk. The light turns green. It is not until a few minutes later, when you drive past a golf course with its sprinklers blasting, that it occurs to you that you should go help the man. You pull into a gas station, buy a cold water and a sports drink, take out $20, and head back to where you saw him. He's still there, staring dazed at the mirage coming off the asphalt. You pull over and hold out the plastic bag with the drinks and the money. He comes over to take it. "Bless you," he says. "Are you all right?" you ask. He nods. "Are you sure? Do you want me to call someone?" No, I'm all right," he says. "Thank you," he says. "God bless you," he says. You resume course, but you wonder if you did enough. You remind yourself that you are alone, that he is a stranger and a man. You tell yourself you did what you could. When you first learned the story of Jesus, you felt that the two of you had much in common. Your mother's names were both Mary, and your names both started with the letter J. You knew enough about adult things to know that you were probably conceived the normal way, but like Jesus, you came as a surprise. Your mother and father were teenagers at the time. Still, they really loved each other, and they stayed together and loved you too, which seemed miraculous enough. Your parents were not religious, but sometimes you would sleep over at your Christian friend's house on Saturday night so that you could go to church with her on Sunday morning. You would sit in the pew and stare up at the image of Jesus on the cross, wondering how he bore his suffering so bravely, wondering if there was suffering in store for you too. When you reach Corey's apartment complex, the thermometer on your dash reads 119 degrees. You slip your sock back on, make your way into the air-conditioned building, and take the elevator to the 7th floor. Corey gave you a key to his place after only knowing you a few weeks. You found this to be premature and also convenient. As usual, Corey's apartment is spotless. He comes out from the shimmering stainless steel kitchen with a dish rag across his broad shoulder. "Lunch?" he asks. "Absolutely," you say, and you give him a kiss. His face, unlike his apartment, is always a little greasy. You wait until he turns around and then wipe your mouth. You eat roast beef sandwiches, watch a movie, have sex, watch another movie. He hands you a whiskey tumbler with one icy gray stone cube placed perfectly in the middle. The sunset outside his floor-to-ceiling window makes the glass glow pink. "So, my parents are coming into town next week," he says. "Oh, that'll be nice," you say. "What are you guys going to do while they're here?" "Well," he says, swishing the whiskey around his glass, "I was thinking they could meet you." "Oh," you say. You take a swig from your glass, and then another. You know you are cornered. "Definitely," you say. "I have a few job interviews next week." Not true. "But hopefully we can find a time." "Awesome." Corey is smiling now. "I'm sure we will. They're staying through the weekend." "Great," you say. You stay for another 20 minutes, and then you tell Corey that your parents wanted you home for family dinner tonight. Not true. When you walk to the car, the air feels just as hot as before, even though it is nearly dark now. You can still feel the grease on your lips from Corey's goodbye kiss. You feel sick to your stomach for having let this go on so long. You decide to end things tomorrow. On the highway, you can see a line of dark clouds forming over the silhouette of mountains in the distance. When you are about 10 minutes from your house, you get a call from your mother. She is crying. Says your father stormed out of the house, shouting he had had enough. Says she is worried where he might go, what he might do. You ask what she means. She says she's worried he is at another woman's house. You find this prospect insane, but you do not say so. You remind her that he loves her, that he is almost always home, that it would be virtually impossible for him to be having an affair. She says there was another woman before. "Before what?" you ask. "Before me," she says. You wonder whether your mother could really be called a woman when your parents met, seeing as they were so young. "There was another woman," she repeats. "And other pregnancies," she says. "What do you mean?" you ask. "The other woman and your father had several pregnancies," she said. "What? You mean I have siblings? You have siblings?" you ask. "No," she says. "No babies, just pregnancies." "Oh," you say. She says she heard your father on the phone several months ago, says it sounded like he was talking to the other woman, says he hung up as soon as she entered the room. You doubt it, you say. "This other woman was a long time ago," you say. "He was just a stupid teenager then." She says she knows that he is seeing the other woman again. "How?" you ask. "She just does," she says. She's crying again. You wonder how to comfort someone who you think is losing her mind and who has also just put your childhood through a shredder. She says she's sorry for dumping all of this on you. You say it's fine, that you're fine. Not true. You tell her you were going to have dinner with Corey and his parents tonight, but you can come home if she wants. "No," she says, "go to dinner. She's fine," she says. "Sorry," she says again. You tell her you love her. You tell her not to worry. You eat a burger and fries in the parking lot across from your high school. You sit there for 3 hours in your car and then turn around and head back to Corey's. His bed is cool and soft. A few months have passed since the phone call. The air is almost cold now. Extravagant Christmas lights line the neighborhood streets as if to compensate for the lack of snow. You have an office job at a medical center downtown. Next month, you will have saved up enough to get your own place. But you wonder whether you shouldn't just move in with Corey. You've been spending almost every night there already. You could pay off your student loans much faster this way, you reason. Plus, Corey is a rather good cook, and his mood never seems to rise above or below lukewarm happy. You tell yourself that this is probably as good as it gets. One evening, as you walk from your office to the car, you notice a flyer on the ground. It depicts an image of an adobe cathedral with palm trees in front. St. Mary's Basilica, it reads, "Join us for midnight mass." You fold the flyer and put it in your bag. When Christmas Eve rolls around, you tell Corey you will be spending the evening with your family. You tell your family you will be spending the evening with Corey. You put on a burgundy dress that falls well below the knee, eat dinner at a Chinese restaurant downtown, have 2 drinks at a near-empty bar, and then walk to the cathedral in the dark. The ornate doors open to a glowing nave with high swooping ceilings and the warm hum of chatter and shuffling feet. You take a seat near the back. At the front, you see Jesus on the cross. His torso sags away from his pinned hands, head resting to one side. His bony knees touch. He looks far frailer in this rendering than in the one at your friend's church, you think, although you wonder if you might be misremembering. The service starts. There is low singing and incense, and much more kneeling and sitting and standing than at your childhood friend's church. After some minutes, the priest carries a goblet over and holds it in the air. He speaks and kneels and stands and puts his large hands together. He holds a round cracker above his head and looks upon it as though it were Christ incarnate. The priest breaks pieces from the cracker and puts them in a chalice. He speaks and kneels and stands and puts his large hands together several more times. An organ plays. Everyone is standing now. The congregation files out in rows and walks slowly toward the front. You are standing in line. You remember the priest saying, "You can cross your arms to signal that you will not receive the Eucharist." When you get to the front, you cross your arms, and then, without thinking, you do a low curtsy. You rise, and the priest gives you a puzzled smile. Your ears grow hot. The line shuffles you back. You slip out before you reach your pew, out of the ornate doors and into the almost cold air. You are embarrassed that you could have ever thought that this would be a good idea. You think of the priest staring adoringly at the cracker. You will tell no one of tonight, you decide. When you get home, your parents are sound asleep. You will yourself to follow suit. In the morning, you are surprised to find that no beam of sunshine pierces through your window. The sky is a rare gray. It occurs to you that you have not hiked the mountain in a while. Your parents are still asleep. You get dressed and slip out of the house. The way up the mountain is easier than before, now that the air is almost cool. When you get to the top, you notice that the family of red-tailed hawks is nowhere to be seen. You begin scaling the jagged rocks above the trail. You wonder if the view from the alcove will have changed since you were here last. The megachurch parking lot will surely be packed, you think. Just as you reach the opening of the alcove, a large man emerges. He is wearing a long brown coat. His gray beard darts out in every direction from his raw-boned face. His eyes are hungry and wild. Before you have fully registered his presence, he has already untied the fabric belt attached to his coat. With either hand, he grips each end of the loose belt and spreads his arms to either side, exposing his pale, bony, naked body. He stands ready, as if waiting for you to kneel at his feet. You back away. You scramble down the rocks. A sharp edge slices your knee. You are on the trail. You think you see the man still standing where you left him, arms outstretched, but you are sprinting, tripping, sprinting down the mountain. You can feel the blood from your knee dribbling down your shin. Small drops of rain pelt your face. All you can think as you run down the mountain is that you believe her, you believe your mother. When you get to the bottom of the mountain, you turn to scan the scene. No sign of the man in the long coat. At last, you pause for breath. The rain has already stopped. You breathe in deep, searching for the sweet, wet smell of the creosote, but you cannot find it.
Hi, So it's my pleasure to introduce Samuel. And I think Samuel is doing something quite different from other Nigerian writers, young Nigerian writers. And I think for most of us who are still emerging, we tend to focus our stories in cities and also in this small town called Nsukka, where Chimamanda has written from, and where most of us who attended the University of Nigeria like to write about because it's a special place. But in Samuel writing, you see him talk about rural life. You see him try to examine the role of religion in that place. And because he writes from, because the story centers on the lives of the Efik people, I think religion is very, very important, being that the Efik people live very close to the Atlantic Ocean, and they were the first set of Nigerian tribes to encounter the missionaries during the 18th century. And so Samuel was born and bred in Uwa in the Niger Delta, southern Nigeria. His fiction, largely contemporary and historical, explores life on the margins and spirituality. His works have appeared in the Fictional Café, Down in the Dirt, Literary Yard, and The Sun magazine. He is a first-generation graduate. Samuel studied communication arts at the University of Uyo in Nigeria. While there, he served as the general editor of the Student Union magazine, called The Informer, and he was also a research assistant. Away from literature, Samuel is passionate about humanitarian services. In 2020, during his compulsory national youth service in Nigeria, he raised funds and set up an ultra-modern public restroom. He also led a team of his fellow graduate volunteers to facilitate the financial inclusion campaign on behalf of the Central Bank of Nigeria. He bagged an award, which is very important because he won't stop telling me about this, right? Where he had to shake the hands of the former president, Muhammad Buhari. And I told him I'm not happy with him because I don't like the president. But that's fine. It's my political view, right? So he bagged an award, which I think it's well deserved for you to put on that amount of hard work and for you to be recognized by the president. So welcome, Samuel.
Hello. Thank you very much, Chibuike, for that very fantastic introduction. I want to read from one of my most bizarre stories, which, as Chibuike said, is set in a rural community in Nigeria. Actually, getting inspiration from part of my experiences during my NYSC, as Chibuike talked about, which earned me the prestigious presidential award in Nigeria. I have to start the reading now, so that it was one of those mysterious afternoons in Nigeria. I was 2 weeks old in Igono, a countryside where I was mobilized under the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, to teach at a high school. I was a corps member, for that was the name given to one under the NYSC scheme. 25 years old, I was fresh from college, and since I hailed from a different tribe in the South-South, my posting to Uyo, a Yoruba tribe in the Southeast, was both an exciting experience and a difficult transition. Cultural variations had plunged me into boredom. Sometimes I would go for a day or two without talking to anyone, because most of the locals did not understand English. Worst, my host community was short of basic amenities like water and electricity. The only borehole system down the street had withered like trees in winter. Electricity poles bowed to each other here and there, their cables draped into clotheslines by the villagers. The local sourced water from borehole they had dug in the ground. They would knot a bucket to a long rope, drift it into the hole, and pull out a bucket full of water. Strange blisters had bloomed all over my skin when I first bathed with this water, and the mushroom healthcare facility in the community I had visited almost drained its meager resources to rescue me from the skin problem. That afternoon, having been indoors since morning, I decided to take a walk down the street to familiarize myself with the geography of my relatively small host town. I had more on my mind than the brutal sun, which sent down torrents of heat waves as though the world were on fire. I felt the weight of the mandatory national assignment ahead of me. How would I teach children who do not understand English? How would I survive the unsafe water? Am I even safe in this town? Every day, news of corps members being kidnapped in their host communities or butchered in their sleep in the quietness of dead night flooded the airwaves. People talked about this everywhere, in marketplaces, in churches, in mosques, and down neighborhood streets. Last week, for example, the internet was aflame yet again with the latest entry. A busload of corps members emptied into a river somewhere in Lokoja. On their way from the orientation camp, the coastal bus had conveyed them and swept from the bridge, somersaulting into the river. None of the graduates survived. Though folks attributed the accident to spells cast after the victims from their evil relatives back home, who had vowed never to see them become graduates. As I walked along a laughing street, my cross slippers clattering against tiny pebbles on the road, the sun became unbearably scalding, blazing my cheek. But clad in a silky short-sleeved t-shirt on top of a pair of black jeans, I was light enough for the sunny weather. My black waistbag hanging loosely over my shoulder, I looked around either side of the streets. I gazed at the mountain peaks far down the horizon, which sent out mass of smoke into the sky, like the smoke from the incense at Immaculate Heart of Jesus, my home parish in the Niger Delta. I gazed down at naked children with bloated stomach playing in front of mud wall houses that lined the streets, which had rusty zinc or tarpaulin roofs. The kid fascinated me. The bottomless joy that shone through their charcoal black skin, the air of liberalness in which they played around. Some of them played peekaboo, while others seemed to play hide and seek even in the afternoon. Their long-drawn squeals lancing the air. Somewhere on my left, an open-air restaurant rested near a showmender store. A handful of patrons sat round a table, stooping over and munching away with their bare hands. The restaurateur, a barefoot woman with a hand-woven hair, went round the table with a long spoon, scooping food from a charcoal blackened pot into the patrons' plates. On my right, a grand waterway led from the street and far into the bush. Waste of assortment littered the broken walls, and mounds of fine sand from erosion grew from inside, almost to its brim. On the edge of the canal, far into the bush, were sprouts of elephant grass tangled with sprouts of flowering marigolds, I sighted 3 kids. 2 boys and a girl, all 3 squatted backing the street and pulling away into the channel. I looked away, disgusted. Off Alafun Street was a roundabout which had a bit of lively air. Occasional cars and motorcycles ring round an ancient Oduduwa statue. A provision store and a microfinance bank stood facing each other across the roundabout. Behind the scene, vultures landed and took off from a huge dumping ground that spread far into an alley, scavengers scrambling around it like workers at a construction site. Backing the dump, I paused at the roundabout, enjoying the townish atmosphere. My eyes scattered from corner to corner, taking in the movement of the townspeople. Farmers, market women, teachers, churchgoers, Muslims, child hawkers, school children. All of them looked happy and full of life. A car rolled, a hand tapped me from behind. Startled, I turned. It was a mad woman. Jesus, I screamed aloud and jumped off. My heart thudded so hard it nearly whooped out. She smiled nonsensically, revealing the vacancies left by her lost incisors. She had surfaced from the dump. Gingerly, I brushed off the wet dirt she had smeared on me where she had tapped me. It was terrifying. I thought I was dreaming. How could a mad woman lay hands on me in real life? I scanned her. She had on just a piece of wrapper, with which she strapped to her back a roughly 1-year-old child whose head dangled side to side beyond the edge of the wrapper. Kosi, she mumbled further to me, rubbing her hands on each other like a praying mantis. I could not and did not care to understand her. I suspected she was speaking the Yoruba, but I ignored her. I had heard a lot about the modern madness in Nigeria, that now people went as far as faking madness as a money-making ritual. It was 2020 and the pandemic had plunged the country into its worst economic recession in 4 decades. Earlier in the year, the federal government had lamented that the national coffer was running out and that Nigeria had exceeded her loan limits at the World Bank. They said that almost half of the year's budget went into debt servicing. The naira had crashed significantly against the dollar, inflating the prices of commodities and petroleum products. Companies were folding or downsizing as a result, a lot of foreign firms shutting their doors and fleeing the country. But I was convinced this woman was honestly mad. What woman goes stark naked, her body littered with leaking sores, in the name of surviving hardship or for ritual reasons? Her hair was quite long, browned and tangled into 2 gallant tufts that came down almost to her waist, evidencing years of severe and honest madness. Years of scavenging dumps for food and spending nights in gutters had darkened her into a silhouette, even in broad daylight, and the offensive stench of decomposing garbage stuck around her significantly. I dashed away, trying to wear back my initially unperturbed countenance, though my heart was still banging from the shock. But the mad woman trailed behind me. I wanted to run, but I was not sure she was specifically after me. I thought that her trail behind me was in demonstration of the dramatic restlessness that characterizes madness. Having a mad person on the street does not mean they were after you. After all, mad people too are road users. But now she walked faster, her stride ticking with madness. I looked back at her often as I heard the pipe sound of her bare feet stamping against the road. I began to worry she was after me. Oh my God, I thought. I hope this woman is not coming for me. Have I offended any Yoruba deity and attracted a mad woman's attack as the repercussion? My thought went even wilder. Sometimes these mad people could be agents of the gods, running mad to keep the gods potent and their altars sacred. What should I do to scare her away? Should I make strong faces to her, the way people did to threaten mad people away in Nigeria? I should not have given her a chance at all. The core members in the news were kidnapped or murdered or died through accident. Would I be voodooed into uselessness by a Yoruba mad woman? I should have remained in my house. The mad woman inched closer, and now it was clearer she was coming for me. She started to mouth some undecodable word after me, as if she was talking to me, her lips moving in exaggerated prattle like the mandibles of a grasshopper devouring grass. Even if I screamed for help, no one would want to meddle in madness. People ran very far away from mad people, including even the police. And most disturbingly, what would the local think of a young man like me mounting the street with a mad woman? They did not know me so well yet, since I was still new in the community. Though core members had some level of credibility, especially in rural areas, for their education and the prestige of being under the care of the federal government. But this was not when they were caught messing around with mad people. They might even think I came to sleep with her, for this was a time when a lot of mad women on the street were either pregnant or carrying babies, and the society was wondering who were responsible for all of those. There were stories of men having affairs with mad women as ritual for wealth. They said the ritualists would disguise themselves as mad people, wearing head ties, torn gowns, and dirty themselves with mud. They would visit the victims in the night, drug them through food, and sex them. One of the bloody folks was caught recently in the Middle Belt. The story said he was paraded, ringed with tires, doused with petrol, and set afire. Would this be my fate? I worried. Who would tell my family the truth that I did not and would never try this? How would editors slate the news headline tomorrow? Corps members caught with a child-wielding madwoman in Oyo State? How many national dailies would feature a photo of me with the dirty woman on their front pages tomorrow? My mind was not at rest. I almost melted like a cube of sugar in water. I could feel strange coldness soaking into my body from my fingertips. My feet started to sweat in the cracks, my toes swimming in the pool of the sweat. I walked faster, introducing a reasonable gap between me and the mad woman. She bridged the gap, catching up with me so that we were now walking elbow to elbow. I ran a few steps and she chased me. Who wishes to be chased around a busy roundabout by a naked mad woman? So I stopped and stepped back, blocking my nostrils with my fingers to barricade the putrid stench from finding its way into my lungs. The mad woman stopped too. I opened my pouch, brought out a 500 naira note and threw it at her to buy my freedom. I wish I had done this earlier. Perhaps she would have gone far away by now. She picked the money excitedly, but unlike typical mad people in Nigeria, this one did not go away. She stood back and smiled at me even more foolishly. Now I felt clearly I was dreaming because this could only happen in the dream. What a nightmare. Whether this was a dream or not, I was not going to let this mad woman cast a spell on me or create any further scene with me on these streets. So I resorted to making strong faces at her to scare her away. I clenched my teeth, widened my eyebrows, and rolled my eyeballs. Then I stamped my right foot on the ground towards her, again and again. Cha-cha-cha. I frightened her. Cha-cha-cha. Instead of running away, the crazy woman made the strong faces back at me. Hers were even more terrifying because being mad already, now her shaggy hair and her bushy eyebrows gave her a very menacing look. Cha-cha-cha, she mimicked me, cha-cha-cha. It was like a mad couple showing off on the street. Embarrassed, I stopped the faces immediately, rearranging my face back to normal. But she was still making the faces and laughing. Cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha, she said. As she continued to back at me, her wrapper loosened free, and the child slipped off her back and landed on the ground. The naked boy did not cry at all. He lay there motionless like a teddy bear, staring at the sky. Our people were correct. Mad women's children rarely cry. No matter how much their mothers swing them about in the course of madness, they will not even whimper. Completely naked, the mad woman switched into a magical dance, twisting her body in impossible directions like a body contortionist. I looked briefly around the now busier junction, worrying how many people were watching the drama. But luckily for me, nobody seemed to look in our direction. Also, I thought, the villagers were minding their businesses thanks to the busy air. Before I knew it, the mad woman snatched my bag and scampered into the streets. Oh my God, I cried, placing my hands on my head. My bag, oh my God. Then I chased her a few paces, but again, what sane graduate chases a naked mad woman around in public, in the full glare of his own community? So I held back. Her child began to giggle. I looked down at him. He had sat up, hunchback, staring up at me mischievously. His head was oval, his eyes dull but round like an owl's. He stood up and toddled towards me, whimpering and raising his hands to be carried. He had sores all over his body. I dodged him and he fell a second time. I looked back at the mad woman. She had staged herself at the center of the roundabout, on top of the statue, dancing around with my bag. I wanted to let go of the bag and run back to my house for my dear life. but now I remember its contents. My newly acquired iPhone 4 Pro, my national ID card, my ATM card, and my house key, all of which I used to carry about in case of urgent need. I was really mad at myself. It was like I had traded places with the mad woman, as in trade by barter. She took away my education and sanity, giving me her child and madness. I was numb. I stood there in complete misery. Migraines invaded my head suddenly, and I felt uncontrollable waves of spasms traveling through my spinal cord. I walked up to the edge of the road to cross to the other side so that I could talk to someone about it. But two kids crossed over before me. They looked 14-year-old, unkempt like mad people themselves. But they were not mad. It was their normal local appearances. "Now you be that mad woman's husband?" one of the kids said, looking at me boldly in the face like a detective. His pidgin was fledged with Yoruba accent, making it sound like French. Since they did not ask, I wanted to tell them I was a corps member, but the other one said, almost interrupting, "Now you dey sleep with that mad woman?" "No, please," I said, shivering. No. Then why you dey play with her like that?" No, I was not playing with her, I said. I was just walking, and then she surfaced from the dump and started to attack me. The kids stood there in silence. "Please help me," I told them. "She stole my bag and ran away." The kid gazed down at the mad woman, who was still gargling on the statue like a street dancer. "That thing in her bag?" one of them said. "Yes," I said impatiently. "But who you be?" one quickly asked. "I'm a corps member," I said to them. "Wow," they screamed. "But if we collect that your bag for you, what you could give us?" "What would you want?" I asked them. The kids smiled at each other, talking with each other with their eyes. "Laptop," one said. "You will give us laptop." "No, iPhone," the other one said. My eyebrows widened in shock. But since I really needed the bag, I had to bargain with the kids. "Okay, I'll give you both 1,000 naira each." Again, the kids looked at each other, this time smiling more ecstatically, as though they had just won a jackpot. The kid chased the mad woman around the streets, from corner to corner, into and out of gutters. She panted back to the dump, where the pot fell from her grips, and my agent picked it back for me. I paid them their wage, and they thanked me and disappeared into the streets. My last memory was of the mad woman's child toddling back to the dump.
So I'm always excited to see Ryan on Mondays because he wears this kind of like distracted look. And it's a kind of look, it's a kind of look as a child I've always seen in adults. And now that I'm also an adult, I've come to realize what it means for your mind to be somewhere far and one part of your mind to be in the present. But for Ryan, I think one of his mind is not just in what he's writing, but what he has just finished reading, which is kind of like a material for his science fiction class. I know it's pretty heavy. But then I think to read Ryan's work is, I don't know the expression to give it, but in Igbo there is this meat we do eat. It's a small piece, well fried, that when you put into your mouth, as you chew it, it becomes very, large in your mouth. And that is what it means for me whenever I read Ryan's work, because it has this kind of like deep philosophical thinking. And it amazes me because Ryan looks so young, but he has the mind of, I like to say old people. And to read his work is more like to encounter ancient storytellers in a modern form. So thank you. So Ryan is a Los Angeles native and is a graduate from UC San Diego, where he studied political science and creative writing. His Primary interests are apocalypse, movement, memory, and the poetics of stupidity, which I don't know what it means. So in his free time, he likes to pretend he does not know what a letter is. Now this is a lie. And this is him trying to avoid that idea that he's a really deep thinker. And during workshops, he gives very, very nice feedback. And then you do like, wow, this is a great editor. So help me welcome Dry.
Thank you. Okay. Are you scrolling for me, Paul? Oh my God. Thank you, Paul. All right, if I go over, I timed this below 15, but if I go over, just someone like run on stage and shout fire or something. I guess the only context for this piece is that in Vietnamese, the word for mother is mẹ. And this is an excerpt from a larger short story. Parabola. The day you remember the taste of the lake, you wonder in what language Mae's tears fell by the lake. You'll think of the stick and then the dog. You trace an escape from the school bathroom, down the hallways, past the Hooper boys on the black top, between the cars where fathers stand by for sons, down 2nd Street, past the tea store where the owner's smile leaves a hole in your chest. You'll run as the skinny dogwoods ungrow back toward cracked pavement and black gum splatters, as the town's breath grows rank from hope and your legs make way for themselves. Your lungs a flooded cauldron of heat. You'll turn when you see Allen's Easy Mart. You'll stop when you see the brown house. No, not that one. Keep going. You always forget. Maybe you try to. You'll reach the house that wears the frackled roof and the blunt, heart-shaped metal door frame on the front. You'll walk along the house, down the alley as tree branches caress your forehead. You'll reach an empty backyard. You'll fall, almost a push. Your tongue will crawl from cave, a tool stranded in the forest that has to hunt but doesn't know what for. May once said that's the closest we get to nature's soul, so when you only taste dirt, you won't help but feel betrayed. Your body an X splayed across the yard for treasure hunters to shout, there, there. Don't worry though, you can always take yourself back. You remember how, yes? You, an ant, and your only memory smells of May. She's ragdolled on the patchy couch, eyes closed, and your hands reach up toward the sleepy dragon's tummy. You press down and the beast awakens, rah, not dead, just play dead. You run, but the dragon scoops you up, and suddenly you are a sky plane above the scratchy floor. You laugh, and she laughs, and no words are spoken, and then you are a warm heap on the floor together. Later on, you won't wonder how you knew of death at such a young age. You'll only remember how the chem cloud smell purpled the salon where Maya works, how the smell followed her home at dusk, the only scarf that LA summer. A week later, she takes you to the salon. From the front entrance, you wade through her coworkers' loud hellos. They seem to chatter about you, but you can't understand a word. Maya takes you to her desk, and you learn she holds hands for work. You watch from a stool as she places her palm under a customer's, brushes them a deep red, and makes small talk. Well, she mostly just nods along as the blonde woman talks of her son who recently shaved a rather ugly mohawk. Soon she gestures to you, and you tug your mouth's edges apart exactly as she taught you. You open yourself to speak, but Mae's stern gaze gashes that thought, and traces of an unnamed question bubble down your throat. The day before school starts, Mae tells you what not to do. You look up from your book on bugs and trees. No talk when not spoken to. No eat as teacher talk. Only eat at lunch. Play soft at break. No stand up as teacher do lesson on board. No walk around. No play dragon. No play go-go fetch. No cartwheel boogaloo extravaganza at school. Only at home. Latest 3 hours before go to bed. Make 3 pals max. Only boys. No play sticks. No sword. No ninja stars. No kiss. Not even teacher. Not even he gave good job on homework and fat gold star. Your head churns, cocoon full of words. Your forehead creases, resolve courses through your blood. You'll earn the respect of your classmates, your teacher, and Mae. You'll conquer the realm of the classroom, and you'll save the queen from the dragon. When can we go to the woods, you ask? At 11:13 a.m. the next day, the teacher calls your mother to school. The two of you cross-legged across from the dean. Ms. face scrunches, her hands tap the desk relentlessly as he recounts the story of what happened. Her eggshell salon coat cracked down the front, the chem cloud smell draped over her. A plush magenta owl watches from atop a mess of papers. You want to ask the dean where the owl comes from, but you know better than to speak. Every so often, Maya looks over at you, jabs a Kleenex at the leaky scratch under your eye, and you tug your mouth's edges apart, exactly as she taught you, but she looks away. You too away. You away yourself to an amber meadow, one where the bugs crawl along the dogs and bears and elephants, all of them the best of pals, where questions don't have wrong answers, where playtime doesn't taste of blacktop and gravel on tongue, where teacher knows who started what, and how can colors come from a place, and what's a gook, and why does the word to palm off the tongue, and why that boy arm bloody, and why you, only a name, only knew, already caused trouble. He bad? May asks. Oh yes, the dean says. He bad. On the way home, you chase the sun down the 60 from the passenger seat of May's beat-up Honda. You ask her who drew those chalk-colored marks that now divide the road, how that person was able to dodge all the cars that came, whether he drew one long line that was blotted over black, or whether every day he etched a row of thousands and thousands of small, small geese on the charcoal stream. She only presses harder on the gas pedal. When you get back to the house, she takes you to the backyard, all the way across the brown ground to the edge, to the rugged fence where the next-door couple's orange tree droops. Up you go, onto her shoulders. Steady now. Go, she says, and so you go. You take only the smallest ones that would have been left to fall. Your arms fold, she lets you down onto the ground, and there you both take a seat. She takes the oranges from you and starts to peel. Me can do, you say. She shakes her head, rockets a wedge toward your mouth, and boom, the sweet tang of a fettered moment before memory. She tugs her mouth apart at the edges, but her eyes are unreadable. You get to die after them, you know, she says. Beneath the slurpy, messy sweetness, you wonder how much of the world revolves around what comes after. You go back to school, she says. You no stay home all day. You pretend not to hear her. You hear a dog maybe somewhere over the fence, but you know. You knew before they called her. You knew before you threw your first punch. At 7, May lets you walk to school. Takes you a week before she relents, lets herself unawake an extra half hour. She doesn't let you help her fry the Farmer John bacon you wanted from Costco, though. Doesn't matter. You, elated. You, a slow walker. You, a late-to-school walker. A forgetful walker, your homework nestled under fantasy books of swords and sorcery and secret forests. A roll-around walker, not a go-fetch walker. Walk slow, a Mr. Reynolds-type walker, how he saunters over to your desk when you look at the clock for a second, how he lets you sweat before he speaks. But get that out of your head now. You, a late walker, an almost 8 walker, and thus an almost 10 walker, and thus an almost man walker. An almost man walker that walks faster than old man Mr. Walker who rolls a walker just to walk. Okay, you don't actually know the guy's name. He smells basement-y. You, a late walker, a poke at black splotches on the pavement walker, a stroll through Allen's Easy Mart type walker. He eyes you as you pass the Xbox cards, corn nuts, powdered donuts, toward the row for candy. Out of Starburst today. Dang. You late for school, kid? He asks, breath spooled from sausage stuffer. You watch the dog tag dangle from neck above a beefy belly across the counter. You and your ma come from down the street, yeah? Seen you around before, he says, and chuckles. You grow up here? Lotto numbers 03, 07, 12, 24, 26, 45. When you don't open your mouth, he starts to rattle off country after country. You don't really get how they connect. Half of them you never heard of before. He stops when he sees your eyes flutter for just a moment. Nah, May. Glad we both made our way out of that hellhole, he says. How old are you, 6? Funny how we probably know more about that place than you. You want to ask where he comes from, how you got here, whether the two of you cross paths. For a second, you see yourself atop those slumped shoulders, closer than ever to the sun. You also want to take a dump on the counter. Tree sap seals your mouth shut exactly as Maya taught. Leave, now. You hand over a few dollars, part of your lunch money, for a bag of Lays and walk out the door. You, elate, aflame. When you get to school, no. Come on, don't go there, not now. Why go back? You've already lonelied far enough to get here. Drag the clock's hour hand past sunset. Place yourself by me. A large bowl of bumryu between you on the table, your soup spoon already submerged under chunks of tomato. That chem cloud smell. A dog chases the sun, thrown from a baseball glove on the doodle you've drawn on the back of your reading homework. Woman on the TV screams at the housekeeper, smashes a golden vase. Her voice can't exactly couch the movement of her lips on the screen. The words scramble to become themselves. Mel laughs, so you laugh as well. When the screen cuts to a car salesman yappy yap bold red deal, you ask me, how come we don't say Vietnam same way we say Violet? She pauses, and years later you'll swear you saw a lie bubble from her eyes. A good lie, but a lie nonetheless. How come 2 elephants don't run from 2 mouse? How come 1,000 sheep's just sheep? How come we know cook from receipt? She laughs, but now you don't laugh alone. After, you'll know better than to ask her for any more homework help. When her show ends, you stand up and move to grab the plates and spoons, but she slaps your hand and waves you off to go elsewhere. At grade 6, you start to spend hours after school at the library computers, surrounded by musty old people and rowdy upperclassmen. You make yourself scarce between wooden dividers. On YouTube, you watch a cartoon llama devour a dead man's hand, unsure why you laugh so hard. Car crashes are apparently funny too, you learn. You watch a symphony of Sophie clothes rush around and around, you and the camera alone at the laundromat, except not alone. 12 comments. XX Booty Bungalow XX was entranced and lets everyone know. You watch an orange, human mouth copy-pasted onto peel tell fart jokes to an eggplant. You watch dogs, dog dance, dog jump on dad, dog, NSFW, dog. One day you'll pet one. A small man on screen teaches you how to grow your own oranges, another teaches you how to pump gas, and another man teaches you how to make other people laugh, even though he doesn't make you laugh at all. Step 1, scoop out your guts, hold your chest open, and shake yourself useful. You also learn that's how you stuff a squash. One day on your home feed, you stumble across me. The camera shakes and shakes, but you know those deep brown eyes, the flat nose, all that gray, the hands that never learned to stay put. You glance around to make sure everyone around has headphones on, slowly turn the volume up, and only then do you know she's not me. She sounds whole. No stutter between sentences, no words mangled on the tongue. She's seated on a park bench, and the trees beyond her, you've seen them before, haven't you? She speaks, to you maybe, of a house somewhere far away. A house by the lake, the only lake that mattered, where women on boats would sell all that you needed and would talk to you when all you needed was a talk. You press your hand to her face and forget the glass, the ocean, all the space between. You latch onto her, the woman on the screen, long after you log off the computer. When you get home an hour before sunset, you see the hall lamp turned on. A charred smell wallows around your face as you enter. Notebook paper scattered across the floor, the closest you've known to those orange autumn leaves. Letters, phrases etched on the pages. Take after you. Footsteps follow. Blood water. Heart home. One page just row after row of ampersands. You open the door to Maya's room and you hear her gentle snores, fuzzy blanket draped over her legs. No chem cloud smell, just the musk of something spilt. You've forgotten she's off work on Wednesdays. Slowly, you toe-step toward her, and just for a moment, her body jerks as though trapped somewhere far away, and then back to snores. You tuck her blanket closer to her neck. You start to feel a pain somewhere, that hole everywhere and nowhere, and you don't know why, maybe because you don't know why. Why you cry even though you healthy, you belly full, even though nothing's said at all.
Kyla D. Walker is a Turkish and Creole writer. Her writing has been published or is forthcoming in the Los Angeles Times, Electric Literature, the Hopkins Review, and Three Penny Review. She was selected as a Tin House Summer Workshop Scholar, a Perry Plus Collective Fellow, and one of 4 finalists for the Key West Literary Seminar's Emerging Novelist Award in 2023. Currently, Kyla is an MFA candidate at Notre Dame and an editorial intern at Electric Literature. More of her work can be found at kd-walker.com.
Thank you, Taylor, for that intro. So tonight I'm going to be reading a chapter from a novel I've been working on for quite a while, and it's inspired by my mom. August 23rd, 2018. It was at a dinner party in a studio apartment in response to that old American adage, "Where are you from?" when I first said, I fled an arranged marriage to an Ottoman heir and came to New York City. I escaped just in time. Usually I responded with Istanbul. It was more palatable to strangers than Turkey, or God forbid the Middle East, though it managed to quiet them still. Fond, backward gazes into college gap year memories arose when they looked at me and remembered drinking Rocky on a rooftop or eating cigarette-shaped burek with oily fingers at the age of 18. They looked into a temporal distance behind us and smiled, thinking about the tipsy feeling of hunger on that trip. Those were long days, lots of walking. I don't know how we had so much energy back then. They remembered passing through history and taking photographs in front of the Topkapi Palace, posing at the top of the Galata Tower or faking a prayer inside the Blue Mosque. One woman said she named a daughter after that gorgeous mosque, the Hagia Sophia. Decidedly so because her boyfriend had proposed in the courtyard, his knee covering the blood-stained cement, where a Christian once fought a Muslim for a square foot of prayer. They returned for their honeymoon. How could you not be blown away by its majestic dome? She asked. I sipped a gulp of wine. And I let them all remember Istanbul this way, as a palimpsest of what it's become. Such a beautiful, rich culture that country has, another said. I didn't correct them or say that it's just a city that only used to be an empire, like Coca-Cola, like the Hilton hotels. One stranger in blush pink stilettos asked if I'd been back in recent years. If I had, I never would have made it out a second time, I said. The circle of guests laughed politely behind frail, moisturized, fame-laden hands. At times, I laughed too, depending on the night. If it was a networking event, I'd usually retain my history as much as possible. If it was a friend's philosophical soiree, I'd let a secret or two float in the sea of casual conversation, just to check my own pulse. But if we were on a fire escape and the ambiance was right, with an amber street lamp and a softness that hit my cheekbone at its cusp, I would smile, pretending that I found nothing to be sad about anymore. No one else was asked about their origin story or the name of their god on a balcony, I noticed. But also, no one else at the party had missed a syllable within this language of their most honest thoughts. Turkey's going backwards these days, isn't it? A man with a Heineken and no ring on his left hand said. Backwards? Was it possible? Then, with a second swig of beer, he implied the recent election. He went on, unprovoked, about the first round victory, the failed coup, the park that almost turned into a parking lot, and a mall with too many escalators, then dropped a few names that finally made me look at him and realize he's a journalist. No casual Sunday paper reader would know what he's just shown off like a press pass. No one else would have understood the vote in a republic no one here cared for and conflated it with the need for more alcohol. He must have worked for the Times. He looked at me still. Was he expecting applause? Sure, of course. But you could say the same for this country, I said at last. He turned then, looking over my shoulder for better company. I didn't say what he meant, didn't acknowledge that my old hometown was sidetracking freedom, replacing government with religion, technology with tradition, democracy with decisiveness. I didn't give him that mini orgasmic pleasure of repeating what he already knew. Luckily, across the studio, the host caught us and ushered us inside for refilled refreshments. I obliged with grace. He opened the door. The night turned cool as rusted sunlight hit my wine glass diagonally, feeling as loud and warm as a crack in the earth. The party started hours ago and is finally dwindling. My favorite moment was about to occur, a little past the small talk, a little bit before the emptiness. Any second now, the confessions would spill and the pleasantries would get skipped like entrees the host had let grow cold. But as I walked inside and down the hall, the new-formed echoes became too haunting to enjoy these strangers' secrets anymore. Such a beautiful, rich culture that country has. How could you not be blown away? My husband studied Islam for a semester abroad before we met. I took Arabic lessons for a summer during grad school. Can you predict the future at the bottom of my espresso cup? Backwards, backwards, backwards these days, isn't it? Yes, I escaped just in time. In the bathroom, I breathed in 4 times, and on the 5th, remembered to breathe out. Then I touched up. Halfway through every party, I reapplied makeup to cover up my sins. Here they called these flaws. I'll teach you the same, Ada. One day, your best friends will be named Bobby Brown and Elizabeth Arden. People love a pretty face and often confuse symmetrical features for selfless habits, a well-intentioned soul. You really don't have to say a thing to become adored if you use the right amount of blush, foundation, concealer. But always use more concealer than blush, or else they'll think you're insane. Occasionally, I said it again where I was from to other strangers who arrived late to the party. I said it just for fun, out of boredom, or to see their real faces unveil for a moment before they returned to smiles always on. The same shade as artificial light from a muted television, blinking while you dreamt. But tonight, Ada, I'm back from the dinner party at last, only a little tipsy, and you and I are alone in a rosé-colored bedroom. No babysitter in sight. She's home by now. The house is quiet in a rare way, one we must get used to together now. I'm placing years into a spoken story beside your shaded lamp, and I try explaining my history with my hands, but you are asleep. You are gracefully asleep, thank Allah. I would never forgive myself if you truly knew my past, Ada. My life has not been a children's story, and so I tell these chapters to myself beside you, hoping that you can feel each emotion through osmosis, hoping they transfer to your DNA without the pain of experience, hoping I tell you these things so you can learn one day how to be, because I wish someone had told me. It's 2018, you fake a dream, I touch your hairline, and my fingers pause on the crack where the golden strands meet your brow. Out on the boulevard, a siren wails from 3 blocks away. I look up, searching for its snooze button. Of course, there are some evenings when I wish you could know, when I wish that memory was genetic, and I could pick and choose which moments of my past you keep on your skin in the form of freckles. You'll never know my youth the way it was. You're 6 years old and smell like pink candy and learn the alphabet from an iPad. I'm sitting on the edge of your twin-sized bed, the quilt's frayed end in my fingers. You stir in your sleep and move onto your left side. Sometimes I think you can hear me and are only pretending to sleep the way I used to back when I was a daughter. But you wouldn't understand. See, I couldn't face you to tell what and where we came from. Maybe it's all futile. I go back and forth trying to decide what I prefer. To recite these tales while you're awake, or to hope you never know them at all. I'm not sure if you should. Anyhow, after I die, I bet future scientists will figure out how to extract memories from 6 feet of soil, but please just leave me be. My freckles of memory would cover too much of your arms anyway. They'd hide your beauty. They'd be a burden. If I were cheesier, I'd say that history can't be cheated or learned through shortcuts. It must be delivered by the hands of a clock. But you know me, I can't wait either. I would have ordered expedited shipping on Amazon Prime. While you dream of the future, Ada, my little miracle, I'll slip into my past beside your bed. I'll go as backwards into time as my country supposedly has. It gets lonely here, but the memories are comfort food, barek with feta cheese. It's an ancient story about a cold Monday evening at the cinema. It was the Monday my life began and ended and held everything in between. You toss and I turn to the truth that's always tasted too much like fiction. I was 27 then, a kid just like you, I began. In 1994, the Turkish government and the people's religion sat on either side of a pendulum in a place they used to call an empire. Now a footstool has stolen its name, a footstool upon which American businessmen and European philosophers cross their legs and rest upon after a hard day's night, pondering what happened to their great nation and their fine skin, respectively. During each decade, Istanbul swung back and forth from secular to scarved. They turned mosques into museums and faith into a faraway memory. My parents rarely talked about God. He was an idea, a relative who didn't call anymore, not even on the holidays. By the end of that year, I couldn't distinguish what was in the movies from what was moving in front of me, and I didn't know Baba was planning his escape. At the time, I didn't know we were racing each other to get out. I stopped speaking for a moment to listen to the sounds of New York. It's night here in 2018, but it's always night. Even the afternoons feel like sleepless nights with the light on. I sneak out to the fire escape to smoke a quick cigarette. A bad habit I blame on my 20s and the fashionable nihilism of the time. It was so simple back then. Smoking made me forget about the hunger, movies made me wonder about another age, and soon, almost every night, I was killing myself the way Americans killed time. I watched your chest rise and fall from the outside. You could always tell when I leave the room. "Mommy," you scream. "Mommy, where are you?" "I'm here, Gazelle, right here," I say. I make my way back to you. "Oh, I thought you were gone." "Never, Ada. I sit on the end of your bed again. The quilt is soft to my fingers." "Can I ask you something?" you say. "Sure, anything, honey." "Why do you smile even when you're sad? Molly's mom doesn't do that. She cries." "I don't have anything to be sad about anymore," I say. "I thought you told me that everybody does," you say. Every so often, Ada, I don't believe it's you in there, but the soul of my father, transmigrated into your dreams, speaking to me through a little American girl's voice. "Is it you?" I ask in Turkish. You squint your eyes then, Ada, not understanding who I'm addressing. It's only that you say these phrases out of the blue sometimes, much too worn and old for your smooth skin. Bubba would have thought that was so funny. I can almost hear his silent laugh now. With his head flung back towards the bottom of his neck, it was too good for sound. "Of course it's me, Mommy," you reply. You rub your eyes and sit up to face my neck. New York quiets and takes a rare breath. "Will you tell me more of the story now?" you ask. "No, not tonight. It's late. You need to sleep, Ada. Sleeping will make time swing." "Fly. Time's supposed to fly," you say with that voice you use when I embarrass you. "Right. We'll make time fly." I correct myself. I almost had it. "Sweet dreams, Mommy." "Sweet as honey, Gazelle." Gazelle. Beautiful. Do you remember that? "Oh, honey, we're out, I think. Can we get a jar from the Good Farmers Market on Sunday? The one at Union Square and not Astor Place," you say. You're so definitive it makes me stutter, so steeped in this language I'm barely touching. When I speak to you in Turkish, you reply in English, always in English, because I try to protect you from my mother tongue's implications in this country. You hear me, you half understand my words, yet you refuse to sound like me because my old home isn't yours. My vocabulary is chopped up and grounded like minced meat. The taste of my words are mixed, thrown together with various ingredients that shouldn't touch the same plate. Saffron, sumac, golden raisins, gala apples, candy cherries, burnt wine, prunes, cheap rum, loads of butter. A holiday's delicacy, a filling for pies and pastries, minced meat. Or is it minced meat? See, English truly is a mess of a language, but to me it's perfect for reflecting memories. When you get older, memory becomes as muddled as a remix of a hip-hop track from the 90s. It blends and conforms and gets sampled in different places until eventually it becomes its own melody, wholly new and unique and not at all what it once was. Now, when I think back to that first year in America, I see baseball games in Bronx stadiums and evenings at the Met Museum and afternoons at the Central Park Zoo. And then when I try to explain to you, the first baseman from the New York Mets ends up in a Grizzly Bears postmodern exhibit, and I too get framed behind a screen of glass. Who's out? Who's in? Who's home? Who's safe anymore? Honey, I'm home, but the Mets have lost again. These questions blur any lens of reality I might have had, but it was all real. It's just not in the right order anymore. This is why I feel the urgency to tell you my stories before I lose them forever. They're constantly slipping, melting out of my hands and into each other's. 8 of my memories, similar to the stubborn language of yours, are kaleidoscopic, fractured, irrational, though poetic nonetheless. My past, Ada, is just like your English. I kiss your nose and pull the blanket over your collarbone. Sure, Gazelle. We can go to the farmer's market at Union Square. New York exhales, I do too. You close your eyes and pretend to sleep again. My tongue must have seemed foreign to you, like my mother's was to me, but in a different way. Hers was foreign because of time and not place. I thought perhaps between us we could reverse the pattern and two differences could equal a similarity, though I see now that belonging doesn't accept double negatives. Our relationship wasn't an arithmetic sum. I love you, Ada. I love you too, Mommy. But can I ask you another something? Yes, Gazelle, anything, I said. What happened to your daddy? Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Liz Devlin, and it is my pleasure to introduce Sachi Weber. Sachi Weber is a fiction writer born and raised in San Francisco. As a mixed-race woman, Sachi writes about isolation, belonging, and communication by miscommunication. She has a creative writing minor from Stanford, but majored in chemistry and worked as a software engineer for 5 years. These experiences both inform the themes of her writing and validate her certainty that writing is her life's passion. She loves science fiction, magical realism, and believes in ghosts when in the right company. She expresses love through food. Let us put our hand together to welcome Sachi Weber.
Thank you, Rose. Okay, I'm hoping this will be a little short. This is an excerpt from a piece that I started and abandoned during the summer. I'm hoping that this will either resurrect it or put it out of its misery. The working title is Only Boring People Get Bored. At first, we mistook it for the sound of squealing tires, but when it stopped and started again, we realized it was the shrill scream of a woman crying for help. We jumped out of bed and Dylan grabbed the baseball bat we kept under the dresser. We stopped behind our screen door to see Jenny, our next-door neighbor, in felt pajamas pointing at a man running to a car clutching a duffel bag. Dylan ran out first and I followed, the asphalt still warm from the summer day beating against the soles of my feet. Jenny was barefoot too, and in her haste she had cut herself as red oozed down her ankle and mingled with her chipped pedicure. "He's getting away," she said, and we watched him topple into the front seat of a black sedan with no plates. The make logo had also been removed. The engine roared to life, and together we watched the car peel away and disappear around the bend. Jenny dissolved into tears and collapsed into my husband's arms. According to Jenny, it was garbage night, and normally it was her husband's job to roll the bins to the curb, but he was away for the week at a conference. She awoke in the dead of night when she remembered the bins and had gone downstairs to take them out when she heard noises coming from the office in the back of the house. She thought it might be her husband back early, but instead she found the stranger, face covered, melting into the shadows as he stuffed cash from a safe they kept hidden behind an armchair. The man turned around when she walked in, she screamed, and as he barreled towards her, her panic filled her like bile and she toppled over, slashing her ankle on the edge of a table as he pushed past her to get into the hallway and out of the house. She didn't know why she followed, only that her lone defense was to scream and that the others would hear her better if she were outside. That was more or less what she said. It was the intention. She kept trailing off and shaking, and as Dylan built static, rubbing her shoulders, he suggested that we call the police as well as a paramedic, as Jenny may have hit her head when she fell. We guided her to the curb to sit, and I explained the situation to dispatch. We were a small community and close to town, but we didn't see the flashing lights of the cruiser for over half an hour. When it arrived, the car siren let out a single ear-splitting whoop, as if it feared we would not have noticed it otherwise. While most of our neighbors had not heard the scream, many heard the siren, and within minutes, others were creeping from behind their screen doors in their slippers and hovering at our periphery. Dylan rose to greet the policeman, and I wiggled my bare feet against the asphalt, catching pebbles between my toes as I tried to shake them off. I sat and took over the task of rubbing Jenny's shoulders. I felt like I should say something, some words of comfort, but nothing came to mind, and so I was silent. She had melted into Dylan's arms, had leaned her head against his shoulder, but she and I sat upright, not looking at each other or touching more than was necessary. Just as I started wondering if Jenny no longer wanted her shoulders rubbed, a paramedic crouched down to talk to Jenny, and Dylan called me over to speak to the police. They said they would put out a search for an unlicensed, unmarked black sedan, but they warned us thefts like these were hard to catch. Most likely, the thief abandoned the car soon after or replaced the plate and logo as soon as he was out of sight. Officers poured in and out of Jenny's house, tromping their boots over her welcome mat and across her hallway carpet. We overheard an officer ask Jenny the estimated value of what the thief had taken, and she told him that they kept emergency funds in the safe, as well as foreign currency, passports, and legal documents. Over $6,900 in domestic and foreign bills had been taken. "You're lucky he left the passports and social," said the officer. "Most of the time thieves come in to sell identities. Those go for a lot more than petty cash. Good thing he was a dumbass." He laughed, and his buddies laughed. "Then why did he have a duffel bag?" I asked Dylan, who didn't hear me. By the time the police were running out of things to do, the first tinges of daylight were leaking over the roofs. I saw the Rices totter over to Jenny and hand her a mug of tea, as if to provide some tribute that would grant them access into all the drama. The young couple with the new baby poked their heads out, but when their 4-year-old bolted out of the house in fighter jet pajamas to see the police at work, they carried him back inside and slammed the door. Dylan exchanged numbers with the officers, and we walked back inside, rinsing dirt off our feet in the kitchen sink. Dylan went back to sleep. I was exhausted too. Fatigue weighed on me like poison. I followed him into bed, slipping under the sheets in the same pajamas I'd worn outside for the past 4 hours, but the light made it hard to sleep, and just as I was dozing off, I heard the whoop of the siren as the police left the cul-de-sac, and I just couldn't do it. Ever since the move, I'd started every day the same, wondering why the fuck we were here and not literally anywhere else. We were homeowners now, something Dylan promised me would create opportunities for going anywhere we wanted in a year or two's time. I told him I would never live in suburbia, certainly never raise children here. If we had kids, they'd have nothing to do but soccer and drugs. At the risk of stating the obvious, it's hard to view a cul-de-sac as the end. It's hard not to view a cul-de-sac as the end of the road. Most of Moraga was rolling hills, yet we had found the one street on a truly flat surface. If anything, it curved down towards the cul-de-sac, so when Brandon and Gary's bulldog missed the tennis ball they threw, it rolled down over the asphalt until bouncing to a stop on our yellow lawn. Every time Brandon's fingers brushed our dead grass while picking up the ball, he reminded me that everyone used the same sod guy, and he really was the best out there. And cheap, Brandon told me. He gives the whole sack a discount. Gary and Brandon lived at the end of the sack, just before the road bent out of sight and became what could be called a normal street. The sack itself was not perfectly symmetrical, but curved down on one side as if pulled by a great weight. If the sack were a pregnant woman's belly, Gary and Brandon lived at the bottom of her ribcage. Dylan and I lived at her swollen, puckered navel. Between the two of us lived the Rices, a retired couple with matching cotton candy hair, and the unshakable belief that Dylan and I had moved to Moraga to start a family. Their youngest daughter had just sent her youngest to grade school and had strollers, a crib, and a breast pump, dying for a new home. "I wish I had stopped at 3, said Mary, chuckling. "The doctor didn't sew me up right. I haven't been the same since." "Did you ever consider not having children?" I asked. "Sorry? Was that the hardest part of having children?" She laughed. "No." A week later, I found a stroller on our doorstep. Not wanting to be rude, I moved it into the garage and stuffed it behind the moving boxes and paint cans until I could no longer see the wheels or the handles. Bryce and Susan had a new baby, and as a result, we had not seen them in weeks. Bryce stood at 6.5 feet tall, Susan at just under 5, which it turns out had been the perfect recipe for a long and violent birth. They lived at the sagging end of the road where the belly carried all the weight. Between us and them lived Mark and Jenny. They were a few years older than us, but I could not tell by how much. The gray in Mark's beard meant nothing, and Jenny belonged to this generation that had not yet discovered sunscreen. There was a way that life seemed to hang on them. It's not that they were haggard, it's just that they were no longer young. I came home from IKEA one day to see Mark and Dylan engage in that masculine Roman handshake they all love to do, and Jenny came over to me to lend her bony hand for me to wag around as I failed to apply the correct pressure. She was blonde and in a powder blue button-down, a single Tiffany pendant on her neck, and a sharp, heavy rock on her finger. She worked for a K-12 textbook company, and Mark worked on a graphic software for an animation company in Emeryville. He rode a motorcycle. Their marriage made no sense to me. Maybe they had been different people, more similar to each other when they were young. Maybe they had been victims of circumstance in the same college dorm, too comfortable to call it quits. Maybe they bonded because they were both blonde and were quiet, upper-class white supremacists. Dylan told me that being blonde doesn't make you a white supremacist, to which I said choosing someone for being blonde might. He said we should get to know them to find out. I told him fine, as long as we didn't make our suspicions too obvious. Your suspicions, he said. They were a boring couple, but I thought about them often, and I felt a guilty thrill the morning after the break-in, as if there were now proof that they were hiding something, that they were the locus of something interesting that could happen around or to me as I settled into my temporary suburban life. As I started my day, I gained a feeling of urgency, as if I were waiting for the signal to spring into action, gain purpose, and get my real life going. But by lunch, I chalked it up to the whinging of my inner child, who is eternally understimulated, determined to be the center of attention, and surrounded by the outer shell of an adult, terrified of doing anything she could not take back. Thank you.